The FAWN response, a hidden trauma reaction that keeps you stuck in toxic relationships. Have you ever felt like you had to please someone else at the expense of your own needs and feelings? Then you may be a fawning type. The FAWN response is one of the 4 trauma responses humans can have when they face danger. The term, FAWN response, was coined by Pete Walker, a therapist and author who specializes in complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD, especially childhood trauma. The fawning trauma response is a survival strategy that involves pleasing or placating the perceived aggressor or person in a power position. It is based on the belief that if you can make the other person happy, they will not harm or abandon you. The FAWN response is often seen in children who grow up in abusive or neglectful environments. They learn to adapt to their caregivers' moods and demands in order to survive. As a result, the child develops complex trauma. Complex trauma describes trauma that has no singular cause, but is a result of an accumulation of abuse over time that you cannot escape from. It can be physical, mental, or neglect. During this time, the child learns it can get safety and connection, no matter how small, by abandoning its own needs and becoming helpful and compliant to the parent's needs. To turn a child into a codependent, the parent must scare and shame the child out of developing a sense of self. As a child with a strong sense of self will not abandon its own needs. Developing the FAWN response later in life. As a result of traumatic events such as sexual assault, domestic violence, bullying, or workplace harassment, complex PTSD can develop later in life. It does not have a major event like PTSD that caused it. Complex trauma is caused by an accumulation of abuse. How the FAWN response affects your relationships. 1. You have low self-esteem and self-worth. Also known as toxic shame. You feel like you don't deserve love, respect, or happiness. You often criticize and blame yourself for everything that goes wrong. 2. People with a FAWN trauma response have poor boundaries and difficulty saying no. You let others take advantage and manipulate you. You feel guilty or ashamed when you stand up for yourself, further affecting your mental health. You have a hard time identifying and expressing your own needs and feelings. When you are fawning, you suppress your emotions and opinions to avoid conflict. However, you feel responsible for making others happy and solving their problems. 3. Fear of abandonment and rejection. You cling to unhealthy relationships and tolerate abuse or mistreatment, worrying that if you leave or end a relationship you will be alone and unloved. 4. When you have an unhealthy FAWN response, you don't know who you are. You mold yourself to fit the expectations and preferences of others. You might do this by changing your appearance, behavior, hobbies and values to please others or to avoid criticism. How can you heal from the FAWN response? 1. Learn about the 4F response to trauma. If you have a fawning trauma response, you will respond well by understanding the 4 Fs. When you see your behavior in the light of the 4 types of responses, you create distance between yourself and the response. This will help you realize you are not the FAWN response. It's something you learned as a survival tool, nothing more. 2. If you have a FAWN response to trauma, seek professional help. If you have trauma, it is important to get support from a qualified therapist who can help you process your emotions and heal your wounds. 3. Manage emotional flashbacks. When we are in an emotional flashback, we have regressed back to childhood in that moment. We feel abandoned, shame and fear. The flashback does not have an obvious cause we can pinpoint, so we attribute it to what is happening in the moment. Manage the flashbacks by recognizing them as they happen. Reminding yourself you are in an adult body and not in a dangerous environment like you were as a child. 4. Reduce the inner critic to heal the FAWN response. The inner critic is the voice that says you are not good enough and triggers you into panic when you are about to stand up for yourself. This voice is not you. It's a mixture of the voices of your parents or caregivers. You can reduce the inner critic by telling it to go away or shut up. 4. Realize you over-listen. People with a fawning trauma response over-listen. A would-be predator will spot this like a shark smells blood. Catch yourself when you are listening and not saying anything other than encouraging them to talk more about themselves. In healthy relationships, there is a balanced give and take between listening and talking. 5. Practice staying present. One of the keys to healing and going beyond your habitual triggered fawning is to stay present to your feelings. You will then notice when you feel threatened, you fall into the FAWN trauma response. At this point, you can break the cycle by using breathing or other techniques. 6. Practice self-care. Self-care is not selfish. It is essential for your well-being and recovery. Self-care means taking care of your physical and mental health as well as your emotional and spiritual needs. 7. Learn to set boundaries. Boundaries are the limits that you set for yourself and others in terms of what you are comfortable with and what you are not. As a FAWN type, when you feel fear, you will drop all boundaries as a way to avoid danger or confrontation. To set boundaries, you need to know your values, rights and limits. You should be able to say no without feeling guilty or afraid. Realize that even the thought of saying no can trigger you into an emotional flashback. Express your needs and feelings. Your feelings are important messengers, get to know them and do not be afraid of them. Use I statements to share your thoughts and emotions without blaming or attacking others. For example, I need some time alone right now. 7. Grieve. When you see how long you lived by putting others above yourself and abandoning your own needs, you will feel a deep sadness. You will need to grieve this loss, not only for yourself now but also for the child you were. When you allow yourself to grieve, you will feel anger. Use this anger to set boundaries. 8. Notice your mirroring behavior. Mirroring is when you use the same language others use or the same body posture to get them to like you. We all want to be liked, however, when we are in good mental health, we also understand that we will not be liked by everyone and are okay with it. Accept disapproval, it's normal part of life. Not everyone is going to like you or what you do. 9. Reconnect with yourself. A person with a FAWN trauma response was repeatedly forced to abandon his individuality in childhood. As you heal from complex PTSD and habitual fawning, you want to also get in touch with your authentic self again. Explore your interests, passions, talents, values and beliefs. And celebrate your strengths and achievements. Conclusion. The FAWN response is a result of complex PTSD. However, you can heal from the FAWN response and enjoy physical and mental health.